Sorry, it's a bit of a challenge setting up. I see that the camera is much too high.
So the Mandos. Yeah.
Okay. Apologies, we had a few people yesterday, so we had to put the camera super high so that you didn't see the backs of heads, but now I think it's good.
Yes, sir.
Oh, Jisoo, sorry about that. We are ready. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Kangasane kawayo bayina kangatashi dele to devote kivoya boyo rewayo.
So firstly, hello to all Dharma friends, wherever you may be. Tashi dele, Geshe hopes that you are well, and he hopes that you are happy. Can you hear us all right? Okay.
Oh, yeah, that answer the region Russia, that's all the name, this is Pusubachi.
So we are gathered today with a great purpose, and we are gathered today to achieve the causes of perfect happiness.
Ota te page deshi soma nuji. Ani koro page rotu second rotu shisona. Ani make yamar, penjo chimbo yamar, deshi react haloji ya isa. Tate teach it and like a chilaris.
And the thing is, if we want to achieve that happiness, if we know about the mind and we know how to work with that mind, we don't need a lot of money. We don't need medication. We don't need a lot of facilities. We'll be able to bring our mind to happiness by traveling the path to liberation. And so, in terms of this life, with this knowledge, then, we can engage in these activities in a relaxed way, aiming for that principle.
And
also, in terms of being able to achieve that path to liberation, if we engage in the activities correctly, we definitely have the power. We definitely have the potential to be able to achieve it. But in order to actualize that, what are the things that we need to bring forth within our mind? What within our mind needs to be cultivated?
Lama Tsongkhapa tatsi de kera chimbores, somba zona, sado loyon zones.
So Lama Tsongkhapa says, when the mind is good, or when the mind is wholesome, the paths and grounds are wholesome.
Oh, that tsawa deshi ke tsawa. Akosaro ronge deshi ke tsawa. Yela yenji deshi ke tsawa. Pemba deshi ke tsawa kanga lolote somba zombotel te devasares.
So if we understand this principle, we understand that the root of happiness for ourselves, the root of happiness for others, the root of truly being able to bring others benefit is this mind of loving kindness.
Oh, that nanzo sosolo tsewayo, sosolo niji yo shomba yo seke mo chayares. Oh, that teo ngine temo chiona. Oh, that somba zombote te temo nyadi sares.
Also, a lot of questions emerge about what about compassion for myself? What about loving myself? What do I get out of this picture? Well, the truth is, if you cultivate this mind of kindness, it's the best way of showing compassion to yourself because you come to immeasurable benefit.
Oh, that Tandogano Chishu, Batoma Tejina, Juju, Majuju is a Kalachi Tandal Koros in Jayami Jude, Deshikana, Juju was.
In terms of striving at happiness, we know that all sentient beings are capable of this. Even if we look at the tiny ants, why are they so busy going from one place to another, scrambling from one food source to another? They're trying to achieve a sense of stability and happiness.
Oh, yeah, second Nolon, Deshis government,
Of course, if they weren't worried about that happiness, if they weren't worried about that comfort, they would just stay in their nest, not engaging in so many activities. But the busyness of the ants is because of striving to that happiness.
Oh, that Koros at the Nijimat Tangaros and me, Satella, Tahale, Somba Kaze, Jacher Tona, Tapage, 제 토벌을 못 하게 내지 요하레스.
Of course, the ants are not capable of much more than that. But us, with this human rebirth, this human body and intelligence, we can make this mind very vast, and we can strive towards a happiness that is much greater than that.
어다 녀만에 녀마 다와네 다와 로니 로 다체 토벌을 보게 되시 그거요 나요. 어서 무슨 못 해야 될 이사레스.
So if you're striving for happiness, the best thing you can do from day to day, from month to month, from year to year, is to try to increase this kindness, increase the kindness.
어다 somba zumbo de 대학 프레스 온스테네 메 가디나 시다는 시바도 링아 유스가 시바데 지바자 대바 이는 소소소를 제와요서 되었더니 즈마 전으로 생각하레스.
If we say that we have self-compassion, if we say that we love ourselves, but we engage in our activities of body, speech, and mind without trying to infuse them with this principle of kindness, then our stated self-compassion is actually meaningless.
다 드리치랜드 드리지 자다로야 롱이네 예이네 다 somba zumbo 야보지 용하시야 발라 다 제와 비도 아버지 그거 알세가레스.
So whether we speak about ourselves, whether we speak about others, if we really want to bring forth this mind of kindness, a mind of sewa in the sense of mercy, or what I would maybe translate as loving concern. Maybe loving concern conveys it better. A mind of loving concern is absolutely important for being able to bring forth that kindness.
어다 제지양 로아리 주가 생체 세이나요 그 브레자 체줄로 마티베다 제와 될 세이나 가고 지가레스.
And also, we know that if we have this attitude of loving concern towards not just human beings, but any living creature, including the animals, they sense that, they like it, and they often reciprocate, don't they?
어다 드리지 이사 가도 다 되는 다 머리 메일과 비도 버디야 이사 제와 논이 제와 비도 버 제와 야쇼지도 다 당간도 내가 소티 이사레스.
So our main task with this human rebirth, with this human intelligence that we have, is to recognize this mind of loving concern and that kindness and increase it as much as possible.
어다 내서 드리지 이사 레와 야보테 다 비야서 바좀보 다 할래야 야보지 된다 다파 베제도 이 somba 가빙은.
So then let's bring forth this thought that I am going to use this human rebirth and the facilities I have right now to bring forth this mind of kindness. And I'm going to bring forth this mind of kindness infused with joy in a joyful way.
어다 somba 좀보 세 프레디네 템보지 용하셔 발라요 처음에 초와도 너도 되지가디나 집바디나 디네바시 야다 되지바 종아지 소리 sombaches.
We also know if we're really committed to bringing forth this kindness in the fullest possible way, then our unwholesome karma, right, our unwholesome mental states will block that. So we should also think, I want to clear away all of those possible obstacles.
벤이 이워시야 바이나 벤나가서 세트가디나 파 조니 데데바이나 다 자체 모서 너도 좋아한다 말아치서 띵이 돌 데바이나
Yeah.
아니 세계 니빠티 쇼질 비토야 말 쇼질 비마토가 이자 내서 야보 데스데스 내가 제바이나 수치 뭐지 대 유미야 말했어
Care português 말했어요, como assim?
세계 니빠 쇼지든 말래나
Yeah.
아니 내가 야보 스잖아 야보 선수지나 때모지 못하고야 말했어 말했어.
And another really important thing to be able to be successful in bringing forth these positive mental qualities is that if the mind is constantly scattered, if it's going towards a vast number of objects, sort of flitting to and fro between all of these objects, if it is lacking that ability to focus on something and to really pay attention to bringing that forth, we will also not be successful.
뼈나 치이나 척척거로 가사 갈 줘대요나 니빠면 이제 괜히 좀 마대기나 야보 대토요 말was. 저 가사 갈 대대바이나 용바질 괜히 요바이나요. 김이 야보 좀 좋다고 말was.
Lelo.
가사 갈요나.
Yeah.
저 쇼지들레서나.
Yeah.
괜히 차수가 좀 야보 좋다고 말was.
It's like, for example, if you were trying to clear away some garbage or something using water. You know that if the water was just sort of filling the place or the room. It would just kind of not move the garbage around. It would just be sitting there but wet. But we know if we have water like in a hose with a focused stream with some intensity, then it is possible to clear the garbage away. It's a little bit like that.
어다 내서 드리지야 이상한서 고자비칼 미빠템보 그거래 미빠 춘주 그거래 세한테 어제세 드리지요 살아스.
So that is why we say that when we meditate, we need a clear object of a focus, and we also need, for lack of a better word, a focused object of focus. In other words, something that is not too vast.
간저 이나도 손지 그 이내를 가리기나 때 첨보지 셀 대간도 와스 이나요 첨보가 대대가 세트 코르테스 도대가 이사 오드 니빠데 때 추야요 살아스.
Okay, sorry. So Geshe, sorry, I was thinking limited object of focus, but Geshe was actually saying a small object of focus. So in fact, this might be counterintuitive. Like if we visualize the Buddha, for example, we want to visualize him as really, really big. But in fact, this is said to have the possible problem of creating mental scattering, which is why we usually visualize the Buddha as a smaller as a point of focus.
너도 와서 너단 너도 다 깨져 먹으면 돼서 어다 던지지자 다 세쁘게 레레 대하게 알레도 뭐 니셀레레 지는 것도 되게 있어.
And so just with this in mind, we will just take a few moments to place the mind in a state of peace, relax the mind.
괜히 옆에 뭐 저치 펠레레 저하는 감각오는 만도그서 와서 대노지도 요소 맞았어.
So we know that if there's some water that's filled with some particles, if we place it down and allow it to be still, those particles will settle to the bottom. The same is true as we still our mind.
네, 이 실로판도를 깔라. 아니, 저 처음에봐, 룽 처음에봐. 다 감각 실로파도요. 징업이 깔라, 류중마도. 어다 드리는 야지 여보 감각 징업이요. 서파지.
So let's focus our attention on our breath. And as we exhale, as we breathe out, think, I am breathing out the stale air and energy, as well as any discursive or unwholesome thoughts. As we breathe in, think I am breathing in pure, clean air and positive things. So meditate on the breath like that.
처음에 좋아 노도서 파실로파이니를 리데와 셀헬레 만다와테 좋아서 서파지.
From these discursive thoughts, these projections being stilled and cleared away, my body and mind are at ease. Bring forth this feeling of ease.
로소서 그들은 날 기고 그거요. 날 강에 그음에 세한테 셀 때만 노지. somban 노지. 어디야가 니빠 강가 소소로요.
Then think this basic wish that I have to avoid all suffering and to achieve stable happiness. I definitely have the power and potential within me to achieve that. But in order to be able to activate those potentials, I need a mind that is peaceful and relaxed.
세시와도 다 렐레도 되게 차지 쪼데 가디 이나 좀바 좀버테다 뭐 때문이야 다 때문이야는 뭐 돈이 돼야 돼.
Having established this mind that is peaceful and relaxed, I want to bring forth this loving kindness. And I want to be able to maintain this kindness in a focused and continuous way without setting it aside.
마치가 노다 춘춘다마다 용거를 때는 뒤 젠지 좀바좀버테 봐 매와 조치미 좀바템고.
And think, as I practice this, I will encounter conditions in life that are difficult, that are problematic, but I will not allow these conditions to degenerate this intention of kindness.
소소기 바템 텔라테는 용거도 예기 바템 텔라테는 용거도 어다 데려가 자제간가 소소는데.
The happiness of myself is connected with this kindness. The happiness of others is connected with the kindness that I practice. Therefore, I will maintain this kindness continuously.
도스ingene 가제 더더 som바좀보 다 야쇼지를 보겐도 와서 소위 제위라가 텔라테는 손주도 전제 삼바스이나 절라때 문제로 진노사.
From my side, I will try to bring forth this mind of loving kindness, and I will try to maintain this continuously. May I achieve the blessings of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to be able to do that. So we'll do the prayers, and I'm sorry, I just want to also adjust our musician setting for the sound so that you can hear the prayers as we recite.
알겠어.
Okay, good. So we'll begin with the praise to the Buddha. Tenpa chomden de jin shepa dra chomba yanda bar zobe sangye reba dang shasu Dewar Sheba Jiten Gemba Gebuduwe Kalo Gyurwa Lana Meba Tenpa chomden de dejin sheba da chomba yang taba zobe sangye reba dang shatsu denpa dewa sheba jiden chenpa jebu dewe kalo gyowa lana meba ladang mi namgi tenpa sangye chomden de pechawa shakya tuba la chazo lo chedo gyabsu chi tenpa chomdende
Deji
dejin sheba
jeba
dra
dra chompa yang
daba
daba
zobe
zobe
sangye
sangye
riba
riba
dang
dang
shasu
shasu dem
demba dewa
dewa
sheba
jeba
jiden
jide
chemba
jemba
chebu
jeba
dewe
dewe
kalo
kalo jo
gyowa lana
lana
meba
meba
ladang
ladang
mi
mi
namgi tenpa
temba
sangye
sangye
chomdende
chomdende
pe jawa
bejawa
shakya
shakya
tuba
tuba
la chanse lo
chanzolo
chede
chedo
kya
jaso
su chi
jo.
Short mandala offering. So ji bögi jo je me do ram re ra ling ji ne de gen pa de song ye do me de bu wa ye no nama da jing la je bar jo idam guru ratnam mendala gam niryatayami. Refuge in bodhicitta.
Sanje
Chedan
chedan
sogi
sojo
chenam la jangchu bardu dani kyabsu chi dagi chinyin gibe sonangi jola penche sangi joba sho. Chedan sogi chenam la jangchu bardu dani kyabsu chi dagi chinyin gibe sonangi jola penche sangye jobar sho. Chedan sogi chenam la jangchu bardu dani kyabsu chi dagi chinyin gibe sonangi jola penche sangye jobar sho.
오야 다 간조 밀리어 본들 다 내가 전부니 저와 어느 롱게 때문에 다시 뭐 연재 때문에 다시 마셔야겠다 내가 어제 그거 알았어.
So having achieved this human rebirth, we then have two main tasks. The first, to achieve the complete welfare of ourselves, and the second, to work towards the complete welfare of others.
어다 될 때면 이제 다시 마셔야 될라고 말아와서 알레로데 주의시이나 메시지를 이나가
So when we say complete welfare, that's quite a big thing. So we're going to have to put some energy into it. We see that even to accomplish a minor worldly task, right, we often have to expend a lot of energy.
어다 칼라 베나니마치 칼라를 이나요 다 저도 제모모치 소그데 마도 레라와요 야만디 와스.
If we want to make sure that we have, for example, enough food for a given day, we have to engage in a lot of effort to make sure that all of the causes and conditions necessary for that are in place.
어다 칼라치 대바치 이나요 거로포게 조와 데르지 지체르지 잡아서 주바지요나 아니 지부게 야 니가게 되지 대와 칼라
So if we are able to put that effort in an effective way and amass all of the causes and conditions, we can assemble some delicious food for that day and for those meals. And the happiness that we will achieve, it is a happiness, but it is a temporary happiness.
어다 데이자더니 어다 대시 어다 당길라바 노지 대시 타심바지 용하셔바라요 다 용인 주서 총아 대용 요와데 할래 같이 뭐 이사레스.
Therefore, if we want to achieve that complete and lasting happiness, how much more do we need to pay attention to amassing those causes and conditions? And we do this by paying attention to the activities at the beginning, the middle, and the end. And those at the beginning, the preparation, are very important.
조조지 될 단계라바 요 순지 시송하는 라바 노지로 마노아지 좀 동버들 다 달래가 전부지 그래서.
And so, as we embark on this task, at the beginning of the session, we recite the Tsongkhapa, the refuge and bodhicitta prayer. And the first part of the prayer, that of refuge, is to help us to distinguish from the mistaken paths a correct path.
어다 첸더도 단에 제시마 어다 그야 코알 데비리텔라 세놈데 단 니가 대시가 그게 로마노아 때도 단계 응만도와 노지 som바송버티가 다다 로마노아 차기 아래서
And also, let's be clear, when we say mistaken, that doesn't have to be so exclusive. So if we look at mistaken and unmistaken from the perspective of this life, people of any belief system or none who practice kindness and live their life with kindness and engage in activities informed with kindness, from the perspective of this life, that's an unmistaken path.
어다서 로마노아는 다 야슈 대샹도 샹도 논나라이 다 대바침비 샹도 다 로마노아 따따를 주게 되래서 알았어.
However, when we speak about the unmistaken path in the ultimate sense, we talk about this mind of refuge. And when we talk about an unmistaken path that is also very vast, then this would be the uncommon Mahayana refuge.
되래. 다 용 로마노아 이나요 다 로코로 여보 이나요 다 디세 리워도 다네 할레베트님 야 할레야기 다 가오만 뭐 되거나 건요다요 아이자 로 멤버를 쳐봤던 지 셋이 사대요나 오다 가지터 로마노아 주본도 토야지 알았어.
And because that unmistaken path, right, in the context of refuge, it's unmistaken, but in terms of achieving the result, because it is limited, it might take a long time. It might take many kalpas or many eons. Therefore, we want a path which is going to be a little bit more effective, a path that is vaster and allows us to reach the goal more swiftly. And so this is where we come to the mind of the mind generation or bodhicitta, which allows us to distinguish from a limited path a vast path. So that's the Mahayana mind generation.
어다 내서 야보다 이는 땡이 내서도 터바렌디 왔어. 좀벌레 이나 가세 이나 로마노 론 주버진도 그거야 해서 못아서요 아래 노드서요. 너무나 지속이 왔어.
And this analogy of the path, it's really effective, isn't it? Because even if we think about needing, from the worldly sense, needing the goal of being able to arrive in a certain place, how much energy do governments and individuals expend in constructing roads, airports, and so forth, so that we can go in an unmistaken direction to reach our destination?
어다 대노지 지바렌디 왔어. 간조 대도 지바레 대시 만다와지 리르파 버스수바지 리르도 그거야 해서 대라파 좀 때모지 그건디 왔어.
So even more so when the destination is perfect happiness, right? We need to be able to travel a path that is going to allow us to effectively amass all of the causes of that result.
어다 될 통이 제텔 당경가 말라바 노지 som바송보 자와 전에 되네 자셔셔 놓야데 통이 진다고 지래야 돼요. 알았어.
Tangwegyusana?
통화. 시워 통화.
Ale. And in terms of what allows us to traverse that path, this mind actually that we can clearly see the results of it is that root mind of kindness. If we are able to bring that forth, this will allow us to travel the path very effectively.
어다 대용 안조 샤니 대 치켄조레 소설 대시 녀레 어떻게 치켄조레 잘라바 노지 하고 살아왔달래 레 돈비깔 치켄조데 som바송보사니 치켄조서 짜도 그 알았어.
So we say that the actual refuge is the Dharma jewel. If the actual refuge is the Dharma jewel, what is a Dharma jewel or something similar that we can possess right now? What acts as a Dharma jewel for us right now can be this mind of loving kindness.
어다 som바송보에 비트네 다 렌데 여보수야데 치켄조 뭐마데 단다 레 돈비깔 데레 알았어.
So for beginners, really, if we have an understanding of karma and in accordance with that, we live kindly. We try to keep a kind mind as much as possible. That is a functioning Dharma jewel. That is a functioning Dharma refuge for us.
어다 시위 중이깔 이나 렌데 쫓아야 되는데 시원 리기깔 이나 같이 뭐 시원 챔비깔 이나 다 그냥 같이 뭐 이자 내래 통제 자와드는 렌데라 이지 대바 세요레스.
So in the scriptures it says the root of all happiness and goodness, observing the law of cause and effect. or observing the law of karma. And we understand that this principle of karma, of cause and effect, is something that is important for all levels. So if we speak of it from the point of view of the Lamrim, the stages of the path of beings of a lesser capacity, the stages of the path of beings of a middling capacity, and the stages of the path of beings of a great capacity, all of these require the observance of cause and effect. And actually, an understanding of these principles means that this Dharma jewel, this actual refuge of Dharma jewel, doesn't need to be so far away from us, right? We can benefit from it even right now. So, to condense these principles to their essence, we could say, abandon what is unwholesome and cultivate virtue, or cultivate what is wholesome. So, in terms of our unhappiness, right? In terms of the condition that's leading to that unhappiness, sometimes it's something very clear and prominent, right? Like a pain or an illness in our body. At other times, it's like this feeling of unhappiness or discontent that just seems a way of being, and we can't like point a finger at a cause, really. But if we understand that karma, cause and effect, is what leads to these, then we will want to then we will want to engage in the practice of purification. And so let us take a moment to do that, but first let us put our mind in a relaxed state. So the first step in this meditation is to try to bring forth a neutral mind, or a mind of equanimity. And think, today I want to engage in a practice to help me purify, to help me clear away negative karma. And to do this, I will cultivate the 4 powers. And in terms of the power of the basis or support, visualize in front of yourself Vajrasattva. And now let us reflect through our life, through our previous activities. What have I done that is unwholesome? And thinking of one or several of those activities, think it was definitely not okay that I engaged in such a harmful action, and bring forth a feeling of regret. And then, at the heart of Vajrasattva, representing the potential of purification of all of the Buddhas, the essence of all of the Buddhas, is a letter Hum. As we visualize that sort of in the place above and in front of us, imagine that together with us are our Father, our Mother, and the vast assembly of all 6 types of sentient beings, but in human form. And imagine that, pleased by our wish to engage in purification of negativities and the accumulation of virtues on top of that purification, Dorje Sempa, Vajrasattva, manifests the aspect of being very pleased with us.
특히 혼을 위해서 봐도 매바티니 텔레트니 봐. 그래서 잡아봐봐 노지 롱 시원에 마소소 시원에 마슈송 소바.
And then think, from the womb at Vajrasattva's heart, countless white light rays and nectars emanate, and these come to my crown and completely fill my body.
소소가 리치 나사 센지강에 아니 디피레라 소바강가 로로 더그도 속에 넘발아 맛 다네 봐. 이거는 대송 소바지.
Mane jogirewa.
오네마.
So then, as this fills up our body, imagine that these lights and nectars completely purify away all physical illnesses, all mental perturbances or illness, all negative karma. And this is pushed out through the lower orifices and through our feet in the forms of unclean substances. So we imagine that this nectar, it's like a very kind of focused stream of water, like from a hose, and it's also very powerful. It is just able to push out all of that unwholesomeness and impurity.
Geshe bala tene yaya gata roa ritu tene senje yuzu te noji chason.
And think, in a similar way, the lights and nectars come into the bodies of our parents to either side of us and all sentient beings in the form of humans, completely clearing away their negativities, obscurations, and so forth.
Lido se melon noji tsuma roje kanga halewi tene lin mandawa se mandawa kiwo chason.
I think through this practice of purification, my body and mind have been purified and at ease. They are clear like a very clean mirror.
Roje kanga jela tene gawato dewa.
Through this purification, myself and others, all of the assembled beings, have a feeling of happiness and ease.
Nona sejin zugu chete do jesembe kombato ba shagi. Oda shagi sombe tune ta shonji se opojise.
At the end of this meditation, then bring forth this wish in order to bring maximum benefit to all sentient beings. May I achieve the state of Vajrasattva myself, and then lead all beings to enlightenment. Meditate on bodhicitta. So we'll pause the meditation there.
Oh, that didijit do jesembe mi pashe to didijit no jiteres.
So Geshe, I just thought to give like an introductory sort of a taster to this visualization of Vajrasattva for those who might not be familiar. So yesterday, of course, in the class, we went in a very kind of thorough way through the practice of Vajrasattva, but he also wanted to share it with the broader audience. And actually, when it's presented in this way, anybody can practice this purification visualization, and really it's something that can bring benefit to everyone.
And
in order to be able to achieve the state of Buddhahood for the welfare of all sentient beings, we need a method which is complete and unmistaken. And in this way, we are very fortunate to be able to journey through this practice of this text of the King of Prayers.
어다 노진 요래이나 내 노진 도야래도 어뭐도 멜로조이나 내 노진 도야래도
So, to be clear, the King of Prayers, it isn't necessarily just a prayer. It can also be a practice. It can also be a motivation. It can also be a dedication. It's all of those things.
어다 때는 어디서와 다 주기샤와 가정가마 용엔주서는 주기샤와 돼서 요래스
So in terms of where we are in the text, we talked about the activities at the beginning, the middle, and the end. So we're actually now at the activities at the end, or the conclusion part of this text.
주기샤와선 다 가져 멜로 이지가 멜로 쩌르이선 로차와레스 지지판도 로차 이게잖아
And so in terms of the actual text, there are these sort of 16 points. The verse number might not be exactly 16, but there are sort of 16 points. So we went through all of those up until now.
근데 제 차와이는 가 시수세요 말레스 제 봐도 시반인 가와레스 요레스
Kan du sukke? Jeg må komme sånn.
멜로 쩌르이도 시수에서는 시수자라바이나
Alle, lås det.
하고서라와
Ja.
더니 가르가르에서는 라야만 되나 아니
right.
제 차와라와
Right.
제 봐도 시반인 가와레스 요레스
So if you say, right, that I've been through this teaching on the King of Prayers, and so I know the actual sort of this middle section, right, the actual practice of the King of Prayers, and someone were to ask you, okay, so what are those verses, or what is the essence of those 16 points, and you weren't able to answer them, right, then you can't really say that I've done or I've been to that teaching on the King of Prayers, right? So we want to review this ourselves and try to remember some of it, right?
다저 쩌르이데 아주 세라냐 가지 뜻다 대수 또야 같이 뭐 릴라버도 만디와스 갈라갈래
And Geshe realizes that this is not easy, right? Because there's actually a lot of points in this text. But if you try to kind of think of those points, for example, the 16, and you just go over the text again and again, slowly, you'll familiarize, right?
간데 먹으면 된데 쩌르이데 같이 뭐지래 생기네잖아
And actually, if you don't have a lot of recitation practice to do at home, Geshe realizes a lot of you do, but if you don't have a lot of recitation practice to do at home, like really reciting this King of Prayers, or just the main body that encompasses these 16 points, that's really beneficial.
정말 릴라버도 만디와스 다지 바래 생각도 간가로와 배나 제유 샤즈비 갈라
What?
제목 샤즈그러와 할래칸도 가고
Kare?
뭐 찌찌즈키 좀
Oh, right.
세지와
Yes.
오케이 다 간님아실 가세 코즈고요나 쩌제즈고요나 찌마도 타마찌라므라고 도바요레스
So I'm sorry, I always forget the name of this particular sentient being, but I think it's like some kind of a marmot or maybe a weasel. And this weasel, he stays in his burrow and he puts his hand out to catch a mouse, hits it on the head, and then puts it under his backside. But of course, what the weasel does is when he sees the next mouse going by, he gets up again to grab it, and then the original mouse is able to run away. So we don't want to be like that with the teachings we receive.
다텔라자 첨보지르다 생각도 간갈 여기에 소텔라자 자그레스
So Geshe, this is a common advice that is given by teachers to their students. Geshe has heard it many times, and it's something useful to keep in mind.
키치데 고는 내내 데데그러와스 이거칼 데데그레스
Yeah.
이거칼 데데 윤조 찔려서 키가야 짜짜 그러와스
Yeah.
라서레 어느 키치데 혼도요레스
So if we're always going to the new thing, just like when we see that mouse walking by and we go up to grab that, but we haven't solidified what we've learned before, just like that mouse that runs away, we could be in danger of losing it.
다 대표시하는 그 베니요레스 다 템보서야를 가르레스는 루잉 시즈와 노지 미로와
Milongwa. Oh,
메메바지요나
yeah.
통금만데 내일지 사루자소나 근데 라바초그라와스
Loso.
라바초는 시지요나 시지라소나
Je.
키템보즈도 그레스
Ale.
된 노징 안졸로준 소가르세요레스
Another example that's given, I'm not quite sure I get this one, but you guys are smarter than me, so you'll probably get it, is to be like a visually impaired person with a body louse. So a visually impaired person, because they're not looking all around for the louse, when they experience that sensation of itching, they are able to grab the louse right away and hold it firmly within their fingers. 그래서 세기오 말해라.
세기오마 할레비가 때문냐로 요레스 가시션도 그러왔어
So I asked Geshe, I was like, they're not killing the louse, are they, right? Because that would be bad. And he said, no. In the analogy, we just think of them holding the louse firmly, right? Like holding that piece of information.
야 간조스 보통 바지 돈유한다 버려 보도 뭐뭐다 미그 본토게 차선을 건졌더니 사냐데 야레스.
And this analogy is very true. Geshe is just remarking that when he sees older men and women, like grandmas and grandpas who don't see very well, they seem to be able to find those body lice exactly and hold on to it.
키 때문에 야게 저세 가르레스. 키치 쇼송도 그야 말아.
So why do they want to hold on to the louse tightly? Because they know that if they let it go when it's still near their body, it's going to bite them and cause them to itch again, right?
선서 심벌에요 말 쇼근다고 들어가서 드리고 고사르자요 알아왔어. 그때다 키 때문에 야데 야레스.
But the idea is they're able to locate it and hold on to it firmly.
어때니 대변용도를 다 기기수가 라자 침보치레스.
So these are sort of common Tibetan, I guess, parables or idioms that tell you about the importance of being able to hold on to the teachings you've already received, right? It's really important.
다 용인 주에서는 단디면서 멜로가 배테레스 그만 멜로 뭐도 살아왔어.
Yeah. So the next part of the text, and we're about on page 10 for those of you who have the FPMT version, the next part of the text is actually describing the benefits of the king of prayers.
배지워 이사다 배행권이면서 알렸던 뭐 디디치레스.
And so because the prayers are actually extremely the benefits are extremely vast, the first verse is kind of like a succinct summary of the benefits, if you will.
리송아 다 공용 수지신노 타이바 리지제데 자와노라 펄 라도 메이 데와 초노 좀 싱게드네 까와파와 예.
One may offer to the Buddhas all wealth and adornments of infinite worlds in 10 directions, and one may offer during eons numberless as atoms of the world, even the greatest happiness of gods and humans.
다 디가 알레펜다고 베베세나만데 페나 쇼지스네 실려 비가 손제도 손제 삼바강가 타네스 손제 강가테 체바 비사게 열자. 지도 뭐 디가
Loso, re.
체바 비사게 열 깨지시게 야레스.
So let us just visualize kind of what this verse is describing. What it is talking about is taking all of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions. So that basically means every single Buddha and Bodhisattva and putting them as the basis to which we're going to offer. So we imagine that we've assembled all of those holy beings to whom we're going to make an offering.
다 텔레트네 다 타이바 주야 메비가 다른 뭐치 그제 나초바치 다 테네 피와이나스. 쇼지 신고를 바 공화지 하고 살아와 뭐치
And similarly, if we were to... Yeah. So Geshe said, sorry, the 10 directions, he erred. The 10 directions are not referring to the Buddhas, but we can say all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, which will be of the 10 directions. But the 10 directions are the wealth and adornment of all of those worlds of the 10 directions. So imagine the wealth and adornments of literally the planets of the 10 directions, and you're offering it up to all of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So the first two lines are describing firstly the field to whom we make the offering, and secondly the actual substantive offerings that we make. And so we can visualize this as all of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas assembled in a field of merit before us. And then we take all of the beautiful wealth, adornments, diamonds, gems, gold, and so forth, not just of this world, but of the world systems of the 10 directions. And we offer that up. And if one offers that over an exponentially long period of time, what is the result that one achieves? The last line in the verse tells you that, even the greatest happiness of gods and humans. So it is the cause of great happiness. Dewa Gigyu chagire.
예전에 노버세근도 와서 예전에 노버세 짜치 뭐 저거야 가래에서는 하도 뭐 대화 추 부수수 바치 거기 콜라더니 용토가 요아이자 그 짜치 뭐라고 싫어 왔어.
It's like a wish-fulfilling jewel, this practice of vast offerings. Why? because a wish-fulfilling jewel can provide whatever unimaginable happiness beings in samsara can experience, even humans and devas, humans and gods.
다치 타마 싱게 드니 까바파와이 세레 총카도 디니데 계시시기 요아레스.
And so in the Tibetan, actually, line number 3 comes at the end. So I'm sorry, as Geshe explains, we'll jump around a bit. So it talks about one offers during eons numberless as atoms of the world.
어다는 제와 드니 피기 요나 아니 총카다고 가제 피기라고 지라바이나.
So if you wanted to achieve this greatest happiness of gods and humans, how long would you have to make those exponential offerings to the numberless Buddhas? Here it says for a countless number of eons.
델 싱게 드니 세나 단좀벌리비 쇼지 실을 다더 가제 요아레스. 더그 정도 녀비가 때문에 좀 뭐지 이제 드니 피기스.
And if we think atoms of the world, think about how many atoms, how many particles are even in just one tree, or even in just one piece of wood. Think of how countless those atoms and particles are. That is the representation for the amount of time that one would make these offerings.
다 디세 가니 니마치 피그레 체세치 피그레 가니스레스는 다르까 어머볼 다 가서라 동가 자야 메바지라고 쓰기야레.
So through this visualization of the atoms of all of the objects in the world, we understand we're not talking about making these offerings for a day or a couple of days or a month, right? We're talking about making these offerings for like an immeasurably long amount of time.
다 던디치 체와 피는 가게와 가제 자체모레 당간 좀 비자 고거라 왔스데세.
So do these analogies kind of give you a conception of the merit we're talking about here? We're talking about an unbelievably vast amount of merit or positive potential, like unfathomable.
다때 니빠 쳔보 게와 자체모 던디치 레 데니 이나요 델리 좀다 수신 되는 요야테 소노도 로조시 뇨레시나 페치가르 텐다 제세티시 그야레스 고네.
So we've established that incredibly, immeasurably, unfathomably vast amount of merit. What merit could possibly be greater than making those vast offerings for eons? Actually, even just hearing the King of Prayers. That's what the next verse tells us.
가와 포와 위 사텔 포와 리종 지도 못해 하고서라 아니 공공의 잡은 드티니 하고서 소시 멜로 잡어라 왔어 근데 소속의 티바도 뭐
차상와 로나 되기를 도와크린스나 콘소 고림 pet 민자오 냠두 로데네 시그레
왜 공공의 잡은 드티니 손주 쪽에 지스라미 레치소요 대바시아와는 세노 도미초 던던저로
I just asked Geshe to read firstly because the order is completely different in terms of where these sentences appear in the Tibetan and the English. I asked Geshe to first read out the verse, so then I'll read out the verse, and then we go line by line. So let us read the verse together. But whoever hears this extraordinary aspiration and longing for highest awakening, gives rise to faith just once, creates far more precious positive potential.
디스와 다때 동보 티바제 뉴는 멜로가 내서 지와라와 가정 마몬도 자라와.
So, to be really clear, when we speak about the extraordinary aspiration, we're talking about this King of Aspiration prayers. And we're just talking about someone who hears it, right? This is just from hearing it.
티바이나요. 다 당긴 것만 채와 무엇이어서 왔더니 데일리 주페 제가레스.
So just hearing this aspiration prayer one time exceeds the merit of making those countless atom offerings to all of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas over eons.
어떤 간조 디파리티르지 간조 강가치 티차르더니 겨와 가서 써야레. 스테이지 지서 유르체 그야레스.
So how many times have you heard the King of Prayers? At least a couple of times. Maybe you've even recited it a few times. So, if you're really convinced of what is being taught here, that is really a cause to rejoice because you have accumulated so much merit. And you know, this is the speech of the Buddha, so we can be confident that he's not misleading us here, yeah?
데레. 더니 쇼주 쇼그 지스 라메시 디 지스 논을더니 메바시와.
Yeah.
메바.
Migbasewa, yeah. And so, the next one is, having heard this extraordinary aspiration, what do we wish for? And this is where it says, longing for the highest awakening. In other words, supreme enlightenment.
레지 조요 대목에다 레지 조요 대바시와 대바 테마지 마도 마시와 이나요 엄마 개와 텔레 줬더니 저한테 서노 동비 줬던데 로그레스
And so, hearing the prayer, thinking, wouldn't it be wonderful to achieve that highest awakening? And giving rise to some faith or confidence in the teachings of the prayer just once accumulates even vaster potential than those offerings.
하고서로 어디서는 사야를 개와 사야를 텔레 줬듯이 매바지레는데 와스 대지 하고네더니 미 야기wo 지네 걸어서서 강간디 와스
So, in terms of practices for the accumulation of merit, if we look at what is being described here, actually this king of prayers is something that is extraordinarily vast. And if we have confidence in that, this is really something that we can take to heart and rejoice in.
다 눈도 대바치 보자라 되더니 다 이나에 대치보 강정 이네 전들 다 저거 말아 와스 시도 개와치 뭐레스 다 대바로 써요 레스 동의 대바
Yeah,
이치게 대바
yeah,
년대게 대바
yeah. So then when we speak of 이체기 대화하고서 좋아?
동의 대바 세 동화 세 주만다고
아,
그룹 돈을 배가와도 세 배게 동반다고 전하는 거라
알레, 로스.
제도마서 동마 쳐야지 알아
아?
저 전용유바지 와나
야야.
그 갈래전에 동마 전하는 거라
디세나 셀보다 보지.
야서 세
알레,
동만다고
로스. 아니 숨바디?
선바디
당화
년
이체 당
년대게 대바
년대서나?
년대서 나로라 대노지 그거도 사지 대바
So when we speak about faith, we can speak about three kinds of faith. Clear faith, believing faith, and aspiring faith. Clear faith, believing faith, and aspiring faith.
다 간줄라 다 그냥 이네테 카타마테레스 년대게 대바사야 돼
근데 둔바디다 보러.
년대게 대대가라 이니면 나로라 대 그거도
And the kind that we really need is that aspiring faith, right? Which thinks that I really need to achieve that which was just described. That's the most important.
다 가지고 띵 타마tin 걸 때문에 노로지요 말해. 더머니 걸 되네.
So in terms of having clear faith and believing faith especially, those are things that a lot of us can bring forth. But in terms of actually aspiring to achieve the things that are being talked about, that's a little bit more challenging, isn't it?
됐어. 다 디디디바지. 됐어.
로스.
다 되게 면로가 면로가 배. 다 이네 전에 다 가지고 야 소소 고자기 면로가 또뭐 배고자. 이네 때는 tel라테는데 봐. 되는 대대와. 아니 전리 때 모인 거라 와서 노지시.
So actually, the way that the prayer is structured, the benefits come at the end. But when we're actually meditating, that's a little bit different, right? When we want to bring forth a particular kind of mind, for example, we first contemplate about the benefits.
이바도 대와.
Then we arise faith. Then we can bring forth the aspiration to achieve that, right? So we could think a little bit about what's here at the beginning, actually.
다 대제도 손은 알아서 토자 가리이나 있던 깔레메 봐. 가디이나 때 가위 원데 좀 뭐서 노진도야지 알았어.
Dunpa, depa, dene?
젠디.
So thinking about the benefits, generating the faith, arising the aspiration, and connected with that, bringing forth joyous effort, those 4 points are what is going to allow us to achieve our aims.
그래서 어다 소지 쪼된데이나 콜로 바비가리나 범범 요저지에 마시게도 와스 디가리나 tombo 손지게 지 투게 예때때 되시잖아요. 아래서 배
Tambodi. Kolo tambo, right?
말 콜로 바바
Kolo barba. Ale. Dene?
세노 tombo 깨체시 비가라 손지게 지를 나로서 터자 그치시 너지 어떻게 깨체시 아래서
So if we look, for example, at the teachings of the middle turning of the wheel of Dharma, those scriptures talk about the exalted knower in all aspects. In other words, the mind of a Buddha, the wisdom of a Buddha, and so forth. So they explain the benefits of that enlightened mind.
아거서래 어다 말이 바빠셔도 집아 정화선에 된 간조 세미때 다만 드리지는 로그러다 살라 요딜 세이나 될 가워죠 요라와스
If we are able to completely clear away ignorance as well as the afflictions and all of the imprints left behind, we can give rise to this mind of a perfect wisdom, which is just like that. So whoever hears about that kind of possibility they're going to like it, right?
This one, 다 어때랬더니 다 대를 펴는 가와도 다 폐도 더니 하고 자서나 더니 다 디니면서 럼바지 더니 jet소 jet동보데 쇼바더니 자와지 쇼주지 세 아니 럼바지 더니 자야.
So having heard about this, right, the potential to be able to clear away ignorance, all the imprints, the potential to be able to actualize the mind of enlightenment, the person thinks like, hey, that's pretty good. Then they start maybe aspiring to be able to do that themselves, and then they're able to bring forth the effort and start practicing. So that's kind of how it unfolds.
다된 미단다 대지바레스 뭐 폐대 통소나 토자대 폐대 통소나 때는 세이나갈 대바도 때는 덤바도 진리 롬에 발레 요아레스.
So if we're able to see the benefits of the goal in the context of spiritual practice, the object of attainment that we're working towards, then we're easily able to bring forth faith, aspiration, and then connected with that, the joyous effort necessary to achieve the goal.
This one, 딘디바지. This one. 딘디바지. 다 지지고 지마티 진도로.
Nganso re nganso tanda gangi sangchu munlam ditabe.
테테레. 다 멜론데 폐 지바시 바테레스.
Re. So now we come to the part of the text which is describing the benefits in a vaster way in terms of like a summary description.
다 공개소 시에면은 됐다비 되는 것도 도지 봉화지 되는 주몽에만 보면 너와 타이 되면 되니도 대단히 바라니 대화 좀 멋진 되면 대단히 근도 좀뭐 되면 전다와 대단히 뭐도 대진저스
Nidro songshwa. So Geshe went through 2 verses. Those who make this heartfelt aspiration for the Bodhisattva way will be free of all lower rebirths, free of harmful companions, and will quickly see Amitabha, infinite light. And even in this very human life, they will be nourished by happiness and have all conducive circumstances. Without waiting long, they will become like Samantabhadra himself.
다 멜로가 폐될 다저 가르가르요 아르자 공개소 시에면은 내 노지 멜로디 따바 이나스. 소소가 다른 예술은 로야gal래 간디 지연바이나에 대지파 다운로 그래스.
So, what kind of benefits do we have if we make this heartfelt aspiration that is the king of prayers? Well, firstly, it is a vast purification which will be able to clear away all of the causes of lower rebirth.
리스와 다 때녀래 야면로 자더니 자타 소소셀 버게냐니 레카 제바이나 되는 동봉에 봐 뽕와이 예세 디피 두볼라서 봐 대다 동요 맞게바 마고 발이나요.
But there's something connected with that, right? If we want that purification, if we want to clear away that negative karma, then we also want to be free of harmful illnesses. So this will help us to steer clear of harmful friends.
리스와 어떤 들리나요? 더니 디피 두보쇼는 거고 말이라 셰와르더니 바 치고 두보야보도 태야 다 제사그라was.
So this becomes like a prayer, and it enables us to be separated from unwholesome friends, not just in this life, but from lifetime to lifetime in the future, not to come under the influence of unwholesome people, but to have friends of good conduct of the Dharma.
어다 디피 두보서다 뭐 뭐치야 하고 살로좀 먹어서 잘해. 태어나 현주선비 답이 현주선비 리세발라 아니 지그 다 지발해 된다. 그와 아니 손지그 리세발라 다 바제 저거 눈이 지래 조지로 왔어.
And we know how dangerous harmful friends are said to be in the scriptures. So for example, if we look at the Lam Rim, the stages of the path literature, it talks about the 4 factors that prevent the ripening of the Mahayana lineage, and one of those is harmful friends.
강가지바르다스 타베리세발라 바제자 손지그리세발라 바제자 아고서라와 대바치미리세발라 바제자 강가좋아주어레스.
So actually, just as kind of like a side note, when we speak about these 4 obstacles blocking the activation of the potential, we can talk about the 4 obstacles blocking the activation of the potential for liberation, blocking the activation of the Mahayana lineage, or blocking the activation of the Buddha nature, the potential for enlightenment. It's spoken about in all 3 of those contexts. 지denso kadine chikbaredwa.
지엘라마이나 지그노르도 대바치미리세발라 바제자라고 치미 따바레데 된다 지바레스.
And so those 4, they're the same, right? The same obscuring factors whichever of those 3 you apply them to. But if you want a scriptural reference for this, we can talk about the 4 factors that block the activation of the Mahayana lineage according to the Uttara Tantra Shastra. So the Sublime Continuum or Gulama.
다 그냥 리라고 거대 워시는 맞세 대도 되면 로얄 바시 제세나 바시 주요하레스.
Misedi kare?
맞세 대도 되면 로얄아요 바시 제세나 되야레스.
If we wanted to talk about it in a more secular sense, we could say that these are the 4 types of obstacles that prevent you from having a meaningful life, actually, right? They prevent us from being able to derive spiritual meaning in our life.
다 그냥 이제 메타면 제지라나 야본디 왔어. 다고 가레스. 지데 되는 디비투 보도 쳐봐도 지레스.
Yeah.
was 지데 아니 자볼라서 비 영어도 쳐봐도 지레스. 지데 산에 사야도 뒤야도 대사도 다 던지 너는 매매비 너다 지레스. 그래서 지데 때는 녀몸 발라 공부시 쳐와 있어요.
So, having spoken about them, Geshe realized, okay, maybe it's good if I outline what those 4 are, in case some people don't know. So the first is sinful friends. The second is being under service to a king or to somebody who we are indentured to. The third is not having conducive conditions, for example, having too little food, water, and not having a place to live, and so forth. And the fourth is strong habituation to the afflictions. So these are the 4 obscuring factors or the 4 obstacles to activating the Mahayana lineage. So if we meet with one of those 4 obscuring conditions, right, we can really see how that would be a big obstacle in terms of our spiritual practice. So quickly see Amitabha, infinite light, right? This is to be able to quickly see the Buddha of infinite light. But what's the real meaning of this? It means that we will be able to go to his Pure Land, the Western Pure Land of great bliss, or Sukhavati. And even in this very human life, we will be able to be nourished by happiness and have all conducive circumstances. So even before that time, right, when we'll go to the Pure Land, we'll be able to have all the good conditions in this life. So conducive conditions doesn't mean getting what you want all of the time. So don't recite the King of Prayers and then be like, but what I want didn't happen, so it doesn't work, right? Conducive, we're talking about conducive conditions from the point of view of practice as well. And of course, this principle, like being able to have those good conditions, we understand that that's connected with merit, and the phrase that one who is endowed with great merit is able to accomplish their aims exactly as they wish. So merit is what makes Tisco. Merit is what makes that all possible. So nourished by happiness, here we can understand that in the more worldly sense, to have a relatively happy life, not to be beset by severe illness and so forth. We can think of it in that way. And so even if that isn't actualized, because we know that karma is complex, just being able to have the confidence that if I recite the King of Prayers, if I practice the King of Prayers, these good conditions will come about, doesn't that lead to immediately a feeling of mental peace? So at least that promise of that mental peace, that mental happiness, is something that happens right away. So even in this very human life, so all of these good things that can happen even in this particular lifetime. ngaso kundu zambo
대형 쩐다와 대도 림보 모토 대전저스 마고바라 이나요 젠델이나 시와지마이나 존재사 바건도 좀 뭐노지 림보 모토 바다 유보 차그레.
And on the spiritual level, this is the next part of the verse. Without waiting long, they will become like Samantabhadra himself. So, if not in this life, at least in the next life, we will be able to engage in those incredible activities similar to Samantabhadra. So think about all of the benefits in that way. So then, having understood that all of the causes and conditions we need to amass to achieve the goals that are aspired to here, then we will now turn to the teaching of Lama Tsongkhapa's In Praise of Dependent Arising. Rangjinshinga Yangme.
Rojin Gayom, Tinmero,
Rangin
Gayom, Sosan Jendasindia.
Sorry.
Rojin Gayom, Mebaton, the Latin and Dunju, Noja Toji, Tepani, Mangandawa, Meju Gaze.
Verse, so we are on page 2, I believe, in the translation you have, and we are on verse 18, which is the verses in this author and the one I have, but I'll just tell you it's 3 paragraphs from the bottom. That's where we are. So I'll read this. The absence of self-nature anywhere, this arising because of that. Both presentations are true, and what need to say that both come together without contradiction.
This one, Ota Roju Tripata, Jasha Nawachita, Jasha Juzo Meba, Jijo Meba. Rojingayo Mebatons.
So the absence of self-nature means if you were to try to say like, well, how much of the self-nature of that inherent existence is there? We would say not even 10%, not even 1%.
This one, Ota Inayo, only Roji Trapa Jasha Tezi, what you said on your Meba Inayo, the Latin and then you did no Chatsuma Yobachi. The Latin and River, ya. Then the Latin and Lezunga Latin and River de do ya. Hakosarawa, or Chicari on a jet to chill Tibade, Yoba.
However, that absence of self-nature does not preclude the fact that, for example, unwholesome karma leads to suffering. Wholesome causes lead to happiness, that from particular causes and conditions, results arise.
Hakosarawa, oh, that and you know, Chaso de Chatsoma de Yotane, Noja Tap, Roji Mebadon, oh, that Jetu Chiag and Rotokanga, Nondo Yobate, Animangawari.
So we see that refuting self-nature or refuting inherent existence, as well as holding that things arise due to causes and conditions, that they are dependent arisings. This is actually non-contradictory. There is not a contradiction here. Until we realize that they are not contradictory, we cannot say that we have really understood dependent arising. And so how do we do this? How are we able to hold both of these, dependent arising and that lack of self-nature or inherent existence, without contradiction? Well, it says that it's really important to be able to identify the object of negation correctly. If we can do that correctly, we won't run into this problem.
Ota Yenda Pazja, Amaruji about the sets about the Koros Yinayo, Gajata Nisa to Maya is a Roji Mena Hakasara, Roji Mes on a Kanga man going to say you, Cheta Chembochilla, Rogares.
So it is said that, setting aside Prasangika, if we look at other schools, which are still quite sophisticated schools, for example, the Madhyamika Sautantrika, or the Chitta Mantran, or mind only, it is said that
Yeah, Amaru Allegenda Coapa Pagenda Pazja, Amar Mikala Kawasa. 아마 로지 봐 세점 바이나 얘네 존에 따와서 도버로 왔어.
제제.
그래서 이나요 로지지 매나 매로 그래서 비 따와대요. 아 이자 돈은 lon가 침보지 논로 야래.
So even those relatively sophisticated philosophical schools, right, setting aside ordinary beings with ordinary views, right, they are saying that if you say that there is nothing that exists at all, that there's not even one iota of inherent or natural existence at all, this contradicts dependent arising, right? And so in this way, the Sautantrikas and the Chittamantrans fall into the view of nihilism.
대이자 따와요 아슈들은 로토요 말했어.
So they cannot reach the final understanding, the supreme understanding of the view.
저기도와 다용 리지가 다 로지지 요나 로지지 저 그거래스. 하고서라 요 되겠더니 따탈은 돈이 우롱같이 노로 야래스.
Other philosophical schools are saying that if you are positing 건다 디케버 카레요레스 누마든 소랑
나원다 버렸을 텐다 롱건도 따따도 제탈은 루야 용도 와서 과자 따다 니마사나
yeah in tata dang cheta kepar yabochi komasong jendag denso rangjuba dang semsampa mai
때는 쇼로바도 되지나 요바 강가로로 로지지 요바래 마도
ale
하고서라 어다 된다 지바레스 로도나 원다고 라도 알만다와 레소
ale tene malabna degire konda
민 요바 강가 로지지 요바레스.
And then others, outsider views, are holding that everything completely exists from its own side, and in this way they veer towards reification, the extreme of existence. Gonda, gimseng chikpa yana chik teta chik cheta chik tata karechene jogi.
서지 라보타와라 되는 용건도 와스.
Ale.
지 되는 메바타와라 되는 용건도 와스.
And so the ones who are holding nihilism say that there is nothing from the side at all that is holding from the mind. 이네 건다 샘삼바당 된소 콘소 랑징기 주파 여레 세기도아
시시와스 콘도 예바타는 따탈로 한로기도 와스.
알레
하고서라
야 nga 세보면 되지 sorry
다 알레 된다 저거도 다 된다 따타도 제대 로지지 예바지 따사소나 하고서라 다 따타도 제대로 로고 요아레 대이자 따왕이네들 와토야면 되스.
If we are holding to any aspect of inherent existence, whether as explained from those philosophical schools or from the outsider, the non-Buddhist tenets, there are only two places where that view could go, to the extreme of existence or to the extreme of nihilism.
리소아 어다 로지지 맨 로그레 스타와지 요바이나요 대우더니 제달은 로고 요아레 따원 농사레스.
And rangjingi me drogires cheta drogires di rangyuba da
아테 주도 문도스 로지바 주도 문도 겔라그만 도와스 로지지 맨 로그레 스타와데 요나요 오타 제달 로고 요아레스.
So if there is no inherent existence, and then one jumps to the conclusion that if there's no inherent existence, that means there's nothing at all, this is the view of nihilism.
저는 서서 노사도 파스 저기들 어단 중인데요.
말이 that's okay. nga deal chuatang. That's so bokomaso.
어다 던지지 다 로지지 매 봐도 아니 땡주가 다 땡는 중앙에 봐니 다 니소데 땡보 그건데 사된다.
And so to eliminate this danger of holding that nothing exists at all, or holding that things exist solidly and independently, to avoid falling into this extreme of existence or nihilism, one must comprehend the union of dependent arising and emptiness.
다 라마 tsongkhapa 고자네 데데비칼라 다 로지지 메바테는 시워치토 로지지 메나요 테네 땡주게 내서는 강가 요바지 통을 테네 할레네 테네 때때바디 비그레스 요아레스.
So Lama Tsongkhapa, when he saw this union, he saw that things lack inherent existence, they lack self-existence, and they are also dependent arising. Seeing the union of that understanding, he offered this praise, a praise more beautiful than what he had offered before.
그거도와 다들 로지스라마데 드리센 라마 tsongkhapa 엄마 콜다 자와시라 마조왕에 타바레 수근도와스 자와시라 tumba니 콜데시 몽보 자비칼라 니마칠 지지 시라 생게 할레베 퍼게 나조도 마수나 켄사치 잡아레스 요아레스
켄사스나
다저 켄사치 된다.
So one day when Lama Tsongkhapa was speaking the Dharma to a vast assembly of disciples, specifically he was giving the commentary on Tsawasherab, the root of wisdom. One of his very close and senior disciples, Geshe, he had a very kind of strange feeling arise within him.
아니 막간기 다 지지 싫어 생각해서 내반다고 좋아치 못 좋아서 되네. 막간기 지지 좋지래스.
Ale. And so that feeling actually manifested physically. So the other students were worried about Sherab Senge, and they kind of all gathered around him to see what was wrong. So as they kind of approached him to see what was wrong, they were kind of going to like touch him, to check him. And at that time, Lama Tsongkhapa said, actually don't touch his body. And then younger son. Yeah. So that body sort of manifestation of Geshe Sherab Senge had happened when Lama Tsongkhapa was teaching on the emptiness of inherent existence. Then, when he noticed that manifestation and this was distressing some of the other students, he began to speak about dependent arising. And at that point, Geshe Sherab Senge sort of manifested as before. And as we've said, sometimes when the person first has that understanding of emptiness, at that moment, it can seem like there is nothing there at all, and that can be a little bit frightening even. Until we are able to see the union of both of these views, dependent arisings, that things arise in dependence upon each other and upon causes and conditions, as well as the complete emptiness of lack of inherent existence, we will never be able to come to the final view. Moreover, by reason of dependent arising, one will not depend on extreme views. This is the excellent teaching, my protector, that renders you orator supreme.
This one.
So, if one is able to understand through the reasoning, things arise in dependence upon each other. Because they arise in dependence upon each other, they are dependent arisings, and because of this, they lack inherent existence. Then one can avoid extreme views. Yeah. So when we talk about extreme views here, we can understand that mainly we are talking about two. We're talking about complete nihilism, saying things that don't exist at all, or we're talking about reification, saying they exist in a solid way in which they do not.
This one,
if we say things lack inherent existence, therefore they do not exist at all, this is the reasoning associated with nihilism. And it is said that actually having this idea that things do not exist at all because they lack inherent existence, that is exaggerating the object of negation. In other words, we're negating in a very full way that shouldn't be negated.
This one,
and if we say, well, if things do exist, then there has to be some type of inherent existence. This takes us to that extreme of existence. If we can understand that the reason that things lack inherent existence is exactly because they are dependent arising. If we understand the reason that things do not exist from their own side is because they arise dependently, we will be able to clear away both of these extreme views of nihilism and reification or exaggeration.
어다 레슨드는 게체지 마와라나 메비 저자 숨바테 아니 수지 쪼된데 저러고 던지게 내서 숨바테 하고서라와 아니 마와라나 메비가 다 내서 지레는데
This is the excellent teaching, my protector, that renders you orator supreme. So orator is someone who gives teachings, right? It's a bit of a funny English word. So in other words, it's because you're able to express that it is exactly because things are dependent arisings that they lack inherent existence. This is why I praise you as the supreme teacher.
어다 땡 안줄미 같이 뭐 간데스레 잘라바이나스 어다 나로서 강에 저도지바 메바조 기테 하고서라와 언자니 모세아데 이자 예모게 내서 강가로로 메바치 조토야레스.
So why is it something that is so precious? Because if we want to get rid of the causes and the suffering and the causes of our suffering, we know that ultimately we need to get rid of the afflictions. And so one who delivers the method to be rid of those afflictions is the one who is the supreme teacher.
데레마도 세좀바도 다루지 바질라바 노지라고 덴바트바 요마레 루지트바 요아레 잘라데바이나 하고서
Dembadrupa yomare.
요마레 루이나 루지트바레 잘라바이나
So when we say so when we say that the mind only school and the Sautantrikas, Yangyur Sundang,
Then Omar Rujiba Zalabayinas, and the Dembatraba Yomar, Rujitaba Yare Zalabayinas.
They say that things are not truly existent, but they are inherently existent.
Pizza do Mason, ko sheke ko sarten tanda Mari Big Yosheke lawyers.
It is almost as if pizza double chicken. So it's almost like you order a pizza and you're only seeing half of the pizza. So the Majjhimika Sautantrika is only seeing half of the picture of how things really exist. The Vaibhasikas and the Sautantrikas, those Hinayana schools, it's like they're just seeing Tsemakashi Dabochi. They're just seeing yes. They're just seeing a few vegetables on the pizza or a few pieces of pepperoni. That can be vegetarian pepperoni. Sem samba. The Kongso Rangjubagi Sheka Yendagdi. And similarly with the mind only, their vision of half of that pizza is kind of obscured by their ignorance. Pizza tongne yapoyo mare. Pizza tongne yagde.
Pizza pe jaba yina. Then deshe jaji ha komand kenza.
Pe chigyan komason gonejo, sorry.
Sesio mari be yenda with pizza jaba yinas. Then tawati ma ramba chat nyur do to us.
Okay. So let us approach it this way. Take the pizza as the object of ignorance that we are trying to eliminate. This is a better way to look at it. If we are trying to eliminate it, then the Vaibhasikas and Sautantrikas are only able to get rid of a few vegetables or a few pieces of pepperoni.
You do what you say.
Then the Chittamantrans are only able to get rid of half of it. The Sautantrikas are only able to get rid of like 70% of it.
하고서라 다 대이자 단다 루지베가 따와라 레바이나 마리 베이에 피자가 서진다고 쳐라된 디와스. 루지비 따와 여벌레바 이나요. 마리 비게요. 피자가 서진다고 섬주지.
So with this sort of Sautantrika view, we've been able to get rid of a lot of that object of confusion, which is the pizza. So, but there's still like 2 or 3 slices left.
빼야 버튼을 했더니 어키 kommer 것은 지켜지게 앞에서도 봐. 미미 텔레비전에 리라본도 와서 좀 맞아도 갖고 온다고 와서 안 갈아서.
So Geshe wasn't happy that I wasn't able to understand his explanation originally, but I thought that seeing the pizza was a good thing. but it's actually you're supposed to get rid of seeing the pizza, because I wasn't clear that the pizza actually represented ignorance. But anyway, hopefully that's clear now. My apologies. I didn't find it that clear, but it's my fault. My apologies. Now hopefully it is.
된다 데레스 로지비 따war레나 야벌레 사르테네 서지 마리 비엘하요아이자 차도니 단다 종아조 토요 말에 녀모.
And so what's the consequence of, for example, with the Sautantrika view, still being able to see 2 or 3 slices of that pizza? Because maybe you're like, okay, you got rid of most of the pizza, so that's a good thing. But those 3 slices of the pizza are enough to disturb the mind so that we're not able to completely get rid of attachment and anger. That's why it's a problem. Geshe said that I thought the pizza, seeing it was good because I love pizza. I mean, that's true. I do love pizza. So if we think about that, right, this pizza as the ignorance, as the way things really are not, right? We want to gradually take away each slice until that mistaken appearance is removed. If we're able to, with the Sautantrika view, come to an understanding that it is a dependent arising, and in the same way, because it is a dependent arising, there is no inherent existence whatsoever, this mistaken pizza is completely cleared away.
Once
that pizza is completely gone, once that is mistaken appearance is completely gone, then the basis for the arising of all of the other afflictions is gone. So the afflictions are completely cleared away. And also, it will help us to understanding that even the causes that we accumulate to accumulate merit, bring forth bodhicitta and so forth, that they do not exist inherently, that will actually help us to accumulate the method side of the path. With this understanding of the union of emptiness and dependent arising, we will be able to traverse along the path without difficulty, without confusion. So that is our discussion on Lama Tsongkhapa's In Praise of Dependent Arising. And I'm sorry about the pizza. It's just like you keep mentioning the pizza. So let us do a short dedication, and then we will open the floor for questions. And just, a teaching-related announcement. We will finish the King of Prayers next week, which means that the following Sunday we will begin the 7-point mind training or lojang, but but we will continue with Lama Tsongkhapa's text, Praise of Dependent Arising. Yeah, so Geshe said most of you are aware, just for the cultivation of the method side of the path, which we were doing on the basis of this King of Prayers, that will be replaced by the 7-point mind training. So also, we may, when we're still doing the 7 points of mind training, come to the end of In Praise of Dependent Arising. If that happens, Geshe-la's plan is, we're not sure if we'll do the entire or just a few verses. We'll do Nagarjuna's Precious Garland. We'll look at Nagarjuna's Precious Garland. Yeah. So that's the plan. Anyways. So we will dedicate the merits. Changjo semjo rinpoche maje banam shejo rechi cheba nyamba meba yang gone gondo bewa sho tongni tawa rinpoche maje banam shejo rechi cheba nyamba meba yang gone gondo bewa sho Jambu Pao Jida Kyamba Thong Kundu Zangbo Deyon Dejin De Deda Gungi Jesu Dalo Che Gewa Dida Thamche Radu Ngo Dusun Shebi Gewa Thamche Gi Ngawa Gangla Chodo Ngaba De Dagi Gewe Tsawa Diga Jong Zambo Chechi Rabdu Ngowa.
롱제 유주 같은 다 전주 전바도 니지 전주지 세야 번저 그 대저발라 다 바시 랭에 간디 주요가 이나에 바주 같은 거 와쇼 소라지.
Through the merits that we've accumulated, may the love, compassion, and bodhicitta that we want to bring forth, and also the love, compassion, and bodhicitta that all sentient beings want to bring forth, may any obstacles to that be completely cleared away. Through these merits, may the sun of happiness shine equally upon all 6 types of beings in samsara. May those experiencing physical illness through these merits, may that be cleared away. May those experiencing mental suffering through these merits, may that be cleared away.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll pause there.
Oh yeah,
are there any questions? Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, there is a question from Facebook from Carol. She says in the chat on Facebook, "Thank you so much for these excellent teachings. Do we therefore focus on dependent arising after we understand absence of inherent existence? We don't stay on the emptiness as absence and lack. What we do next is gradually increase and deepen our understanding of the objects of negation." That's the question.
Okay, I think I understood it all up to the point where she mentioned decreasing the. Can you read me that second?
Yeah.
Again?
So second question, yeah. So first one, do we therefore focus on dependent arising after we understand the absence of inherent existence? Second question, we don't stay on emptiness as absence and lack. What we do next is gradually increase and deepen our understanding of the objects of negation.
Oh, okay. Yes. Okay, I think I'm clear now. So tuche nans dene chua nidu rua tambo di nganso di tongni dang tenjung nyamdu chi gogire dua ine chirtang nganso drotang karires nganso tambo rangjingi drupa le tongwa res lebdu dene nganso tenjung samlu tangiyores gorim di dapo rebes ane nipa di nganso di yul di rangjingi drupa yo ma res di chikpo made yine nganso di tets hako pejela dene gaksha so donang tegures chuani dire
다
tambo di lama roa tambo di tongni hako pejela tenjung samul tangires kana so
말에 다 뇽도야 래 생각하잖아 제 하고서 제거 깔이네 가제트다 니가 뇽도 손오도야
So actually, like in terms of the first, it's not so much that like after you have an understanding of emptiness, then you contemplate dependent arising. From the perspective of the analytical meditation, actually, you're actually kind of going between the two, right? You're putting your focus on emptiness, but then also shifting to dependent arising.
단 요거 깔이네 다는 과자대 가제 로이도 용도 이거만다
tambo
과자.
But then when you shift to your placement meditation, perhaps you could start with the placement meditation on the object of negation, your understanding of the object of negation. So bring that forth in the placement meditation.
어느 뒤지고 가자던데 던지지 때는 소 맛이 단 뒤도는 주고 가자던데 자꾸 알았어.
And then you bring forth a feeling, right, that that object of negation does not exist at all. There is no truth whatsoever in that object of negation, and you meditate upon that single-pointedly.
다 디디 땡주 주도 마셔서 다시라. 알칼칼칼.
So at that time, in the context of the placement meditation, you're not going back to dependent arising and then coming back. You're focusing on that unfolding. And your focus here in the placement meditation is I'm going to completely negate, right? I'm going to be rid of that object of negation.
대용한테는 주고 다 기계를 제거 가려는 루토리파 뭐뭐 같으냐라 어느 로지 매바 간디스레드 대주 간디스레드 대니 간노도 소토는 또야 야레.
But before that placement meditation, when you're in the analytical meditation stage of it, you're going to be thinking like, how are things dependent arisings? What are the scriptures saying that a dependent arising is? How does it work? But how do things lack inherent existence? What are the arguments made for things to lack inherent existence, right? And then you're rotating in the context of that analysis.
다또야 또만년 주고 가려나 땡주도 대절로에 좀좀마도 니지도 가가 땡주 셀템
But when we talk from the point of view of a placement meditation, right? If you're meditating on emptiness, you want to meditate upon that single-pointedly, right? Because placement meditation means exactly that. You are placed upon one object. So if you're really trying to meditate on emptiness, you won't be saying, okay, now I'm doing dependent rising, but I'm also meditating on emptiness. the tenjung dang tompani nyamjak nyamdu de tubia su chetugieres perna jangshub sempa pagpa sangye su tugieres.
녀자래.
냠자.
녀자래. 야, 녀자래 달리라고 야말해. 다 지도를 마들리라고 야말. 좀 sembal이나. 다 손질이야래는데 야로와.
So I was asking Geshe just for my own interest, as he said my question was too difficult. He's going to look it up. So my question was, okay, then who can do meditative equipoise, placement meditation, meditative equipoise on an object's emptiness and dependent arising at exactly the same time? Is it like any bodhisattva? Is it like a bodhisattva on the path of seeing? Is it only a Buddha that can do that? And Geshe said it's like a very high being. Maybe it's only the Buddha, but he's going to check. He's not sure.
So
Carol, I can see you in my screen. Did that answer the first part of your question? Can you give me the second part of your question again? Oh, sorry, Geshe wants to say something. Yep. Oh, right. So in the placement meditation sort of order, stages that Geshe just proposed to Carol's question, what happens is the practitioner has an understanding of coarser dependent arising, as well as a rough understanding of emptiness before they engage in that single-pointed meditation on emptiness. Once, through that single-pointed meditation on emptiness, they are able to bring forth some realization. Then at that point, they can then realize subtle dependent arising. So they turn to that. So that's how it unfolds in those steps. So like at least from the practitioner's standpoint, there's no being who can meditate on that emptiness of inherent existence and subtle dependent arising in exactly the same moment, in exactly the same equipoise. First, that emptiness has to unfold, and then after that, the subtle dependent arising is going to come about. So up until that point, right, from the perspective of the placement meditation, tambo tompani togedi tenjung chamo robashela chegyom. At that point that emptiness is realized in the meditation, it's not immediately reinforcing that subtle dependent arising. And the tenjung chamo top, then the tongni yeah. Tenjung chamo top. But once that subtle dependent arising is realized, Once that realization happens, you can hold the subtle dependent arising in the mind, and that directly reinforces emptiness. You see that connection. Then when you're thinking about that emptiness after that realization, you're also aware of that subtle dependent arising. That's the point that they come together. So when we say emptiness assisting dependent arising or infusing dependent arising assisting or infusing emptiness, it's after that realization. So that's how it unfolds. So this is kind of what is Lama Tsongkhapa describes as the exhaustion of all views. In other words, the exhaustion of even the slightest misunderstandings. Yeah. So after the realization of emptiness, you've realized emptiness, the nature of things, but you've not yet completely exhausted all views. That happens when that subtle dependent arising is realized. So hopefully, Carol, that answers your question. So there's an example that will illustrate the answer to the question, but because we're pressed for time and there's other questions, we'll share that, but that will be coming.
Thank you so much. I don't know if you can hear me. And Andrea has a question too, if it's possible to add, because two of us are in one screen. Thank you so much, Geshe Sonam. Thank you.
Go ahead, Andrea. Yes, I think we do have, yes, we can take, because I see two questions, so we have time for you as well. Go ahead.
I've got like, sorry if this isn't relevant. So I'm interested. So if everything's dependent arising, we've got that, right? So if we take a guru, for example, they're for a person, they are physically dependent arising, but they're also dependent on our mind looking at them. Like when you're trying to like practically use emptiness, I mean, first of all, you need to become aware that every object has these two aspects, that you are looking at the object and responding to the object from your side through your mind, but you're also responding from dependent arising point of view, so the body in front of you. And I'm curious, like, because once you start breaking everything down, like trying to get the balance between what your mind is perceiving and what is actually there, I'm having trouble like working out like the practicalities of that.
And how does this relate to the guru? So are you asking in terms
just the guru is just an object, because like obviously like.
But did you choose this example because you're wondering like, okay, how much of them being the guru is like there is that person there and they are guru, and how much of them being the guru is like from our mind?
A bit like,
Yes.
well, yeah, and also like say an ordained person, like after being one, I know that people will project onto that person all the rules they believe that they should follow and blah, blah, blah. So but it's not just about guru or ordained person, it's about plate, it's about tree, you know, it's about everything, because everything can be broken down into like how you perceive it, what your use for it is and everything. I'm curious about this in relation to the scriptures.
How do we know what's real? Is that your question?
Well, no, because it's real, because it's dependent arising. But yeah, how much of it is, well, I mean,
Outside and inside.
yeah, I suppose that's part of the question, but that's not all of the question. But yes, we'll go with that for now.
What was, sorry, can you say that again, Carol?
You do it.
And you said the balance between what's being projected from inside oneself and what is outside.
Right.
When you start to break
that's
down
what
the
I thought it
emptiness.
was. Okay. Yeah, no, that's what I
But
thought.
Andrea says that's only part of it, but I think maybe we can start there.
Yeah, that'll do. And also because you've got lots of people, that'll do.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. No, Andrea, we're here every week, so you can ask. You can also email me. Nganso di 통역이 율치교래 로아 안에 율디기응네 로아 gacha katsu yulgingune nangwa yongieres. Nganso semla tene nangwa gacha katsu semla tene yongiores. Perna nganso lama samlo tangna guru samlo tangna rwa tene midi guru yimpa yulgi kechula tene res nganso tata nganso nangwa la tene lama chagieres. Triwadire dua.
Kanis. 야, 변화 간소 예지 토소나
Yeah, yeah.
영인이 가서 요아래 된다.
Yeah. Ane nganso semla tene gi nangwa di katsu yore. Nangwa gyacha katsu yugingone yongi yores, gyacha katsu nganso semla tene yongi yores.
노아한테 요아래.
Yeah, nangwa, yulgi nangwa.
노아대로 와.
Re.
노아대도 다 자산이 손라고 지라더니 용 요아래 왔어.
Ngapchu da.
야야야야 시간다고 자.
So the short answer is that appearance of the object, whether it is guru or anything else, how that object is appearing to us, 50% of that, we could argue, is determined from the side of the object, and 50% of that is determined from the side of our mind.
얘도 예진이가 봤을 때 요아래스. 노아샤야?
So we're not talking about the object itself, but how the object is appearing, which I think is what Andrea was asking, at least I hope.
Sort of, yeah.
That is determined 50% by that object and 50% by the perceiver.
So then I'm wondering, like, if we're practicing emptiness on everything, I'm confused, like, how that would influence.
Tompani samlo tangna nangwa di gyurwa kandes jogi eres.
매 똥반이 손었더나 다 그게 노아 덤보 가서 이 가르 통화이나요.
Re.
아고서
Nangwa nangshin yore.
말말tes 거. 좋지. 덤보 가서 라마 통화이나래. 이 잘라 연다서 통화이나요. 따도 레디요 아레스. 로루바 마레스. 마리바 마레스.
Loso.
로체 마레스. 로 용다 바지레스.
Yeah, loso.
아고서라와 디 잘로 론솔 디세 리모 망고 바트네 마리 비고 지소 용기 아레스.
So let's look at it this way. Whatever object we are viewing, the moment it meets with our sense faculties, the object is cognized. So, for example, we cognize this object as Lama, as Guru. That is not the problem, because that is a correct cognition. But what happens is, from that moment of cognition, ignorance starts to interfere and starts imputing ways of existing upon that object in which it does not.
야와 셰까지 요아래 때네 된다 대세 요아레스. 로 마리바 연바도. 로 체마 연바니 더 요거 용건 두았어.
So that moment that an object is cognized correctly and that moment that ignorance interferes with how we're perceiving that appearance, these are like unfolding so closely together. So that's very important to understand.
다 라만즈 밀로지 용거래 대 거로 nembar에 요아레스.
Yeah.
로 용도 바라와스.
Je.
다 로이지 예비가 라만즈 비테도 녀도 잘로지 요아레 다 텔로 바레 요아레스.
So you could make the argument, okay, we are apprehending, let's use that word zinpa, apprehending that object as the Lama. But together with that apprehension, very swiftly arises that Lama exists inherently. That's the mistaken part of it.
하고서
Yeah.
So hopefully, and
가레리나 데레스 요아르다. 나도 어떻게 따그리 예지 통거리 로 체마지 용기 요아레스.
so that's true of any object, right? We first glance at it, there's that cognition of like, this is the Lama, this is even the chair or whatever, like any object, right? But then immediately following, right, in very quick succession, ignorance interferes and starts to hold on to some inherent existence for that object.
어다 대샤미 장그로 뭐 요숨교 숨고 왔어.
And actually, this kind of unfolding of that cognition with that misapprehension is a point that His Holiness the Dalai Lama stresses a lot, actually. So I think, Carol and Andrea, we should leave it there for now, but please contact me for further explorations or also next time. Yeah, see you later. I think, was Donna or Dave next? Donna, go ahead.
Okay, I've just got a quick question, a very basic question relating to the 4 obstructions to a meaningful life. You mentioned being in service or indentured to a king. I was wondering whether you could give a quick explanation for modern current lives, how that works as an obstruction, and also how these obstructions relate to the 5 hindrances as they're taught in Pali and Theravada, because that's what the 5 hindrances
Can
are.
you give me an example of one of those 5, Donna? I read them ages ago, but I don't know if I remember them.
Earthly sensual desires, ill will, apathy, laziness,
Yes, lazy.
anxiousness,
Yes.
and doubt.
Yes. Okay. Yes. I got them now. Okay. Nganso di rik sea gi barche ji yore rwa. Chik di nganso di gyalpo gi wangdu ola yimpa chik rwa. Ine nganso di tengdu gi netsu samlo tangna pechi gi yore bes. Gyalpo ola de dapo chik.
다 빼도요 알아봤어. 빼나 뒤술을 다 뒤안에도 제 먹을 다 내가 뭐 챘니. 요번에 와서 대대기다. 다 대지고 빼야 돼 알아서 야지도.
So Geshe said like it could be like we're indentured or we're in a situation where we're completely beholden to a really terrible boss, right? Who's not giving us any time to pursue anything and we're basically kind of like their servants. That could be similar.
야 된다 대주줄로 거 거네를 리야 버리지 니빠 야 버리지 와서 니도 마서 그대다 마도 와서야만 와서.
The point is like time. Like when you're working for a person like that, all you have time to do is sleep and maybe eat. And every single free moment is in service to that person or to that organization. So because of that, there's no time to work on spiritual development, which can activate the lineage. Yeah?
Well, I understand. I've been there. So.
Yeah.
미다 내서 신나도 때에서 줘야 알았을 텐데. 다이나 리라고면도 와서.
Kandeslagure barche lamdu kero.
비야 바젤로도 치치 탄다고 지된다. 그러니까 이나 그렇지 생지질 배수는 그래. 손어도네 오 좀바도 니지 휴치를 넣어야 된대요 알았어.
But there's even ways to transform that. It's just that it's really hard. We can like take the obstacles into the path, or we can think the suffering that I have of having no free time, having this really demanding person, may I experience this suffering so that other beings don't have to experience it. And in that way, it becomes like a practice of taking and giving, of Tonglen. So it's an obstacle. It's really hard. But even still, there might be ways to transform it.
기타 그 말로 지지고요. 제모지요 알았어. 하고 살아와 칼라야 뱀보티 칼라네 야보면데 아니 내가는 뭐 전에 때는 지가 뱀보 매나요. 내가 야보지요 알았어.
Ale.
뱀보 매나요.
Pembumenayo.
지티를 로버지 다 내가 제마데스 뱀보 매나.
Ale.
나도 칼라네 야보지 그러면 돼 안다 보지.
Yeah.
하고 살아와 팀 먼지한다 가르라. 다 가야 말 칼라잖아. 마트는 사와레레이나 야 잡아이나. 사와 구와작 사와든 지지지 저거와.
Yeah.
근데 레레이나 야자들 이마 갈래질 펜로 그러와스.
Ale tsipa jingya.
어때.
So there's a story that kind of illustrates this principle that Geshe was thinking of, which is a wall was being constructed. And so these are like indentured laborers, right? And so this wall was being constructed, and there was like a boss who was watching them to make sure that they worked. And then as soon as he left, most of the other workers, they just stopped working. And there was one worker who continued to work. And so the other workers asked them, why is it that like you're working? Like this guy doesn't give us any food. We're not even getting paid. Like we just get like the most horrible conditions. And then he said, even though he's not giving us proper food, I will continue to work and to build this wall, wishing that in the future, may this wall bring benefit to sentient beings. So he was able to kind of transform it like that.
다 대노지 소소가 다시 뭐도 니지도 드니 야 옆에서 야야지도 해도 된대고 그거 요 알아왔어.
So if a really difficult work situation allows you to increase your love and compassion for sentient beings, even that could become like something beneficial rather than an obstacle. But still, generally, the principle holds.
오케이 뭐 가서 시에서 뱀보이나 요 땡주야 보시나 더 패서 뭐 유하여 아래 내가 제케이나 요 땡주야 보시나 손바손보야 보게죠 알았어.
So, for example, if an understanding of dependent arising, if a boss really has a good understanding of dependent arising, he or she will be interested in benefiting the workers, understanding that their position depends upon them. Similarly, if workers have a good understanding of dependent arising, they will be diligent in their tasks, understanding that they have this work and this opportunity also partly in due to the boss. And so dependent arising can also help here.
다 땡주가 좋아하나 답하게 주세요. 보시면
When you don't think about dependent arising, everyone's like out for their own benefit, right? Like the boss and the workers. So like that lack of understanding of dependent arising, it can create a lot of conflict.
네
nipa di nganso di rig sepe gi barshe ji konso pali nanglo la lelo dang nesem dang nabsam sem dang dinso jawa yerebes ngachena mare Dinso
대도
tunsogi bashi.
대도 대화도 요하러 왔어.
Ale, loso.
따따 바친 로고 요매 오다에 얼마도 대화도 요도 요하러 왔어. 요도.
So in terms of those 5 hindrances that Donna mentioned, Geshe said they're not an exact match with these 4 obstacles preventing the activation of the lineage, but they are, you could say they're related. Because what was the last of those 4 obstacles? Habituation to affliction. And what is like ill will or laziness? These are afflictions. So in this way, they fit together. So afflictions is like, it's however it relates to all of us. Some of us might have stronger attachment. Some of us might have stronger anger. Some of us might have covetousness, ill will, right? So it covers all of those. And the advice, of course, is to identify which of the afflictions is the most problematic for us personally, and to put the most energy into eradicating that. That's okay. Geshe often tells the story of the Lama who spoke to his afflictions. He's like, if you start to arise strongly, I'm going to arise strongly. If you relax, I'll relax. So we like a confrontational attitude to the afflictions. Yeah, so it's really a useful advice. So that's something that when Geshe recollects, it like brings him benefit, right, in trying to reduce those afflictions. Any other questions? I see Dave's hand.
That was really helpful, by the way. That was super, super helpful.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
Dave, go ahead. Sorry.
First of all, does anybody else had a question?
I thought Deki Lee's hand went up at one point, but I don't know if she's still here.
Yep, it just was irrelevant. So if we're out of time, then I don't need to do this.
All right. No, cool. We can do it next time. No worries. Anything else, Dave?
Yeah, I just had it was more of a reaction than a question. And it's just that when it seems like we out of delusion, we think that if we grasp at things, we can guarantee that. So if we grasp at objects of happiness or pleasure, by grasping, we can guarantee that we can be happy. So we think that by grasping, we can be happy. But when we understand this teaching, we can understand that actually there isn't anything to grasp at. And so it feels like the ground falls away and we have nothing to rely upon to be happy anymore. But then we realize it's all because of causes and conditions. So then good karma becomes really, really urgently necessary. And so thank goodness we have the King of Prayers, where we can generate such amazing good karma, and then so we can have a reliable happiness. I just was that reflection.
Dave chena nganso di yulchi krwa perna nganso duchak gi yulchi krwa di zintubna rwa di lentubna di zintubna dene kibo tempochik degi yores rwa di ma shornana dene kibo kibo tempo di degi yores rwa ine nganso tompa ni tetsa dene yogi kechamatok zinya yo mares roa rangshin ki drupa metsang zinya chikyang yo mares dene chichena nganso ke shorgidua karien sana di dene dewa gi gyu roa nganso di zin tugi yo mares len tugi yo mares yine di samlo tangna roa dene chat sangwa zinya metsang karien sana chat sangwa gyudang kyenla tene chungi yores chetsang nganso sungshu munlam dong dinso kyorna dene gewa gineso chi satugire duas.
Yeah. Zayachi koroga soma noji nimuti soma noji meban menayo.
Yeah.
Jetu che mombo chela tenens was was.
So yes, but what Geshe would emphasize here is that thing that we're holding on to or that we're grasping at, it does not exist in the way it does through the lens of affliction. So from that perspective, there is nothing to grasp at. However, it is a dependent arising, which, yes, makes the accumulation of merit important. So that object, it can be a dependent arising for that happiness, but it's just not going to be a cause of happiness in the way that afflicted mind thinks that it will be.
시대니네 지그 유아레스 된다.
Yeah. So it's important, right, to understand that distinction.
그래.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, sir. Okay.
다 그 당그 petit 봐줄 때 좋아지면 돼. 레브 봐줄 때.
So Geshe said, I guess if there's no more questions, we will see you all next Sunday. And thank you, everybody.
야, 되게 강가다이 될 기보데.
See you later.
to now.
야, 다이 될. 야. 자녀와 기보로.